Listen carefully, not as a message of certainty or prediction, but as a reflection meant to bring clarity to emotions that often feel larger than words. Some connections in life feel deeply significant, not because they are destined or written in advance, but because they awaken parts of us that were previously quiet. When you experience something like that, it can feel as if life is pointing in a specific direction. In reality, what you are often feeling is the intensity of your own emotional growth projected onto another person who has become important in your inner world. There are moments when a bond with someone makes you question timing, distance, and meaning. You may find yourself replaying conversations, reading between lines, or searching for signals in silence. This is usually not about fate or hidden design, but about the mind trying to make sense of uncertainty. Human connection is rarely straightforward. It expands and contracts based on life circumstances, personal readiness, emotional maturity, and external responsibilities. When something feels unresolved, the mind naturally tries to complete the story, even when the story is still unfolding. It is common to interpret emotional intensity as a sign that someone is, quote, meant for you in a fixed way. But more often, it is a sign that this person has become part of an important learning experience in your life. They reflect your hopes, your fears, your attachment patterns, and your desire for clarity. That reflection can feel powerful, even overwhelming at times. Yet it is important to remember that what feels deep is not always meant to be permanent in the way we imagine. Sometimes distance in a relationship does not signal loss or hidden meaning. It can simply reflect life circumstances that are pulling people in different directions. Work, personal growth, emotional processing, or even the need for space can create pauses that feel confusing. In those pauses, imagination tends to fill the gaps. You may start attributing meaning to silence, assuming it represents avoidance or hidden struggle, when in reality, it may just be a natural rhythm of human uncertainty. When someone matters deeply to you, their absence can feel louder than their presence. This is part of emotional attachment. The mind creates narratives to maintain connection, even when physical or emotional communication is limited. You might find yourself thinking they understand you more than they express, or that they feel your presence in some unspoken way. While emotional bonds can create strong impressions, it is healthier to ground those feelings in communication and observable reality rather than assumption. There are also times when both people in a connection are processing their own internal questions. One may appear more distant, while the other feels more emotionally engaged, but both are often navigating their own complexity. It is rarely a simple matter of one person choosing or not choosing another. Instead, it is a combination of timing, emotional readiness, and personal stability. Relationships evolve best when both individuals can be honest about where they are rather than where they think they should be. Uncertainty in connection can create discomfort, especially when expectations begin to form. You may start wondering whether you should wait, act, step back, or move forward. These decisions feel heavier when emotions are involved. However, clarity in relationships does not come from prediction or interpretation alone. It comes from open communication, mutual understanding, and observing consistent actions over time. Without those elements, it becomes easy to misread silence as significance or distance as meaning. At times, people also feel pressure from external influences, such as opinions of others, personal responsibilities, or internal beliefs about what is right or expected. These influences can make someone appear conflicted or inconsistent, but rather than interpreting this as a hidden emotional struggle directed at you, it is often a reflection of their broader life complexity. Every person carries layers of responsibility and identity that shape how they show up in relationships. It is also important to recognize that emotional intensity does not always translate into readiness for commitment or long-term clarity. Someone can care deeply and still not be in a position to act decisively. Emotional depth and practical alignment are not always synchronized. This mismatch can create confusion, especially when one person seeks certainty while the other is still sorting through their own internal landscape. Understanding this can help reduce assumptions and bring a more grounded perspective. When communication becomes inconsistent, the natural reaction is to fill in the blanks. But filling in those blanks often leads to interpretations that may not reflect reality. Instead of assuming meaning behind every pause or delay, it can be more supportive to observe patterns over time. Consistency, effort, and honesty matter more than isolated moments of intensity or silence. Relationships are shaped by what is repeatedly demonstrated, not by what is imagined during uncertain phases. There is also value in recognizing your own emotional state during these experiences. Sometimes, what feels like a strong external connection is also deeply tied to internal emotional needs, such as validation, reassurance, or stability. When those needs are not fully met within oneself, they can become attached to another person. This does not diminish the importance of the connection, but it does highlight the importance of self-awareness in understanding why it feels so significant. Growth in relationships often comes from learning to hold both care and uncertainty at the same time. It requires patience, but not passive waiting. It requires openness, but not dependence on outcomes. You can value someone deeply while also recognizing that clarity must come through shared understanding, not assumption. This balance is often where emotional maturity develops, even if it feels uncomfortable in the beginning. There may be moments when someone pulls back, not necessarily as a rejection, but as part of their own process of reflection. People sometimes step back to understand what they truly want, what they are able to offer, or how their life circumstances align with their emotional connections. While this can feel unsettling, it is not always a reflection of your worth or importance. It is often about their internal decision-making process. In these moments, it becomes essential not to lose yourself in waiting or overthinking. Maintaining your own stability, interests, and emotional grounding allows you to stay connected to your own life, rather than becoming consumed by uncertainty. Healthy connection should not require abandoning your own emotional center. Even when someone matters to you, your sense of self remains equally important. Over time, clarity tends to emerge not through prediction, but through experience. People reveal themselves through actions, consistency, and communication. What is real becomes clearer, and what is uncertain either resolves or fades. This process is not always immediate, and it rarely follows emotional urgency. It unfolds at its own pace, shaped by real-life choices rather than internal interpretation alone. Ultimately, the most important part of any meaningful connection is not certainty about where it is going, but honesty about where it currently stands. When both people are willing to be clear, respectful, and grounded in truth, the connection has space to evolve naturally. When clarity is absent, assumptions tend to fill the space, and assumptions rarely lead to peace. What you are asked to carry through experiences like this is not blind belief in a predetermined outcome, but awareness of both your emotions and reality. You are allowed to care deeply without needing to define the outcome immediately. You are allowed to feel uncertainty without turning it into meaning. And you are allowed to value someone while still prioritizing your own emotional balance. In time, you may find that what felt overwhelming becomes easier to understand. Not because everything resolves exactly as imagined, but because you begin to see the experience more clearly. Some connections remain, some evolve, and some simply teach you something important about yourself. In all cases, what matters most is that you do not lose your sense of self in the process of trying to understand another person. Stay present, stay aware, and trust that what is meant to stay will never need to be forced. This is only the beginning of a revelation that will reshape how you see love, destiny, and your own power. My beloved child, what unfolds now is not sudden, yet it will feel like lightning striking the same place twice, because the truth you are stepping into has been circling you for a long time. Your soulmate is becoming painfully aware that pretending strength is more exhausting than admitting love. Behind their calm expressions and controlled responses, there is a growing realization that the life they are living no longer fits the soul they carry. They replay moments with you in silence, not the dramatic ones, but the small, unguarded exchanges where everything felt natural and real. These memories are not nostalgia, they are signals, reminding them of who they are when fear is not in control. Something is shifting inside them, and it is irreversible. Even if they try to delay it, even if they distract themselves, the truth keeps returning, louder each time. This is the phase where destiny stops whispering and starts demanding attention. Your presence has become the standard by which everything else feels incomplete. There is a hidden pressure surrounding your soulmate now, created by expectations they never consciously agreed to, but learned to carry anyway. Family voices, social roles, past promises, and unspoken obligations are all pulling at them from different directions. To the outside world, they appear composed, but internally, they are questioning everything they once believed was fixed. The shocking realization they are facing is that stability without alignment is not peace. It is a slow erosion of the self. You may feel them thinking about you more intensely, even without contact, because you represent the life they would choose if fear had no influence. This internal conflict is not about choosing between people, it is about choosing between versions of themselves. One version survives, the other lives. And the weight of this realization is pushing them closer to a decision that cannot be undone. Now understand this clearly, because it will protect your heart. Your soulmate's hesitation is not a lack of love, it is the fear of consequences. They know that choosing you means stepping into a reality where excuses no longer work and authenticity is required at all times. This kind of love demands presence, honesty, and vulnerability, and that is intimidating for someone who learned to armor themselves to survive. Yet every day they resist. Life mirrors back dissatisfaction, restlessness, and a quiet sadness they can no longer ignore. The universe is narrowing their options, not as punishment, but as guidance. Doors that once felt safe are slowly closing, and paths that once distracted them are losing their appeal. What remains is the truth they have been trying to negotiate with. This is the once-in-a-lifetime moment where comfort and destiny separate, and only one can be chosen. Here is where your role becomes crucial, not through action, but through alignment. You are being asked to remain steady in your own truth, even if clarity feels delayed. There will be moments when silence feels heavy, when patience feels misunderstood, and when you question whether holding space is worth the emotional effort. It is, because your steadiness is what allows your soulmate to envision a future without chaos. They are watching how you carry yourself during uncertainty, how you honor your worth without demanding reassurance. This is not a test designed to break you, it is a mirror showing them what emotional maturity looks like. The more you stay rooted in self-respect, the more they recognize the safety of choosing you. This dynamic is subtle but powerful, and it is reshaping their perception of love entirely. The closing truth of this part is simple, but it changes everything once accepted. Your soulmate is not drifting away. They are gathering the courage to step forward without regret. What feels like distance is actually preparation, and what feels like delay is alignment in progress. Soon, there will be a moment when words can no longer be avoided, when silence breaks under the weight of truth. When that moment arrives, it will not feel dramatic. It will feel honest, grounded, and inevitable. Until then, trust the process that is unfolding beyond what you can see. This connection is not fragile. It is forming its foundation. And what is built on truth does not collapse when the ground shakes. It stands stronger because of it. My beloved child, what is happening now is deeper than emotion and heavier than words, because destiny has moved from observation into action. Your soulmate has reached a stage where inner dialogue has turned into inner confrontation. They can no longer escape the questions rising within them, questions about purpose, truth, and the cost of continuing a life that feels misaligned. Every distraction they once relied on is losing its power, and every familiar routine feels strangely empty. They are beginning to understand that comfort without connection is not fulfillment, it is survival. Your energy has become a reference point in their mind, a reminder of how life feels when it is honest. This realization is not gentle, it is disruptive, because it dismantles the narrative they built to keep everything under control. They are no longer asking whether they feel something for you. They are asking why they tried so hard to deny it. And once this question appears, it cannot be ignored or answered halfway. At the same time, something important is shifting within you, even if you cannot fully explain it yet. You are being prepared to receive truth without losing yourself in it. You may notice a growing calm mixed with moments of intensity, as if your intuition is sharpening while your patience is being stretched. This is not weakness, it is expansion. You are learning to sit with uncertainty without abandoning your worth, and that is a powerful transformation. The connection between you and your soulmate is operating beyond physical interaction right now, working through awareness, dreams, sudden memories, and emotional echoes that arrive without warning. These are not coincidences, they are signs of alignment taking place beneath the surface. While it may feel like nothing is happening outwardly, inwardly, everything is rearranging itself. This is the stage where many people lose faith because they mistake silence for stagnation. In reality, silence is where the most permanent decisions are formed. There is a revelation approaching that will surprise you, not because it is dramatic, but because it confirms what you have felt all along. Your soulmate is becoming aware of the sacrifices you made quietly, the space you held without demanding explanations, and the strength you showed without seeking validation. They see now that your presence never came from need, but from choice. This realization changes how they perceive love entirely. Love is no longer something that traps or limits them. It is something that reflects their truest self back to them. The shocking part is that they are also recognizing how much of their life has been shaped by fear disguised as responsibility. This awareness is uncomfortable because it forces them to confront decisions made from avoidance rather than authenticity. Yet this discomfort is necessary because it clears the path forward. Once they see this clearly, there is no returning to ignorance. Understand this carefully because it will help you navigate what comes next. When your soulmate begins to move toward truth, there may be moments of emotional intensity, vulnerability, and unexpected honesty. This is not chaos, it is release. Years of suppressed emotion cannot surface quietly. You may feel their energy reaching out, seeking reassurance without words, seeking grounding without control. This is where your self-alignment matters more than ever. You are not meant to rescue, guide, or manage their awakening. Your role is to remain authentic, present, and anchored in your own growth. This allows the connection to evolve without imbalance. The more you trust yourself, the safer they feel stepping into the unknown. This dynamic is subtle but transformative, and it is what turns a powerful connection into a lasting union rather than a fleeting intensity. The truth that closes this part is not loud, but it is decisive. Your soulmate is nearing a point where truth will outweigh fear, and authenticity will outweigh expectation. When that moment arrives, there will be no confusion, no mixed signals, and no hesitation disguised as caution. What comes next will feel clear, grounded, and deeply intentional. Until then, do not doubt the progress being made simply because you cannot see it. Some of the most important movements happen in stillness. This connection is not fading, it is consolidating its strength. What is being built now is not a temporary chapter, but a foundation. And foundations take time, pressure, and patience, because they are meant to hold something real. My beloved child, now the energy shifts in a way that cannot be reversed, because realization has matured into readiness. Your soulmate is standing at the edge of a decision that will redefine how they see themselves, not just how they see love. This is the phase where excuses lose their power and clarity becomes unavoidable. They are beginning to understand that the life they have been protecting is no longer protecting them. What once felt structured now feels restrictive, and what once felt logical now feels empty. You may sense this as a sudden emotional pull, a quiet intensity, or a feeling that something important is about to be spoken. This is because your soulmate is no longer questioning whether this connection is real. They are questioning why they waited so long to honor it. That question carries weight, and it pushes them toward action rather than contemplation. There is a private reckoning happening within them, one that few people ever witness. They are revisiting past choices, not with regret, but with honesty. They are seeing clearly where they compromised their truth to maintain peace, where they chose predictability over passion, and where they silenced their intuition to meet expectations that were never truly theirs. This awareness is uncomfortable, yet liberating. It strips away illusions and leaves only what is real. The shocking realization is that you represent not a disruption, but a return to authenticity, to emotional depth, and to a life that feels lived rather than managed. This is why your presence feels both grounding and intimidating to them. You remind them of the version of themselves they almost forgot existed, and once remembered, that version cannot be ignored again. At the same time, you are being asked to rise into a deeper level of self-trust. This stage is not about waiting passively or hoping for reassurance. It is about standing firmly in your own alignment, knowing that your worth is not determined by timing or outcomes. You may feel moments of emotional intensity where old doubts resurface or patience feels stretched thin. These moments are invitations to reaffirm your boundaries and honor your inner voice. The connection you share does not require you to shrink, chase, or compromise your peace. In fact, it thrives when you are fully present in your own life. Your soulmate is sensing this shift within you, even if they do not articulate it. They are recognizing that your strength does not come from control, but from clarity. This recognition changes the dynamic entirely. Now comes a crucial truth that many misunderstand. When destiny begins to align, it often looks like tension before it looks like resolution. Your soulmate may appear serious, introspective, or emotionally guarded during this phase. There are moments in life when silence feels heavier than words, not because nothing is happening, but because something inside people is still taking shape. In those moments, what looks like distance is often reflection. People are not always ready to speak the instant something changes within them. Sometimes they need time to understand what they feel before they can express it in a way that is honest rather than reactive. Silence, in this sense, is not emptiness, it is space where understanding slowly gathers strength. When communication pauses, it is easy to assume confusion or absence, but more often, it is a process of internal alignment. People begin to notice the difference between speaking out of habit and speaking from awareness. Habitual words are quick and automatic, but words that come from reflection carry intention. They take longer to form because they require honesty with oneself first. In that process, delay is not avoidance, but preparation for something more grounded and meaningful. There are also times when emotional distance is not a sign of disconnection, but of transition. Individuals may find themselves stepping back from old patterns of reacting impulsively or holding on to assumptions that no longer feel true. This can create a quiet period where outward expression slows down, even while inner understanding becomes more active. What appears as stillness on the surface may actually be a reorganization of thoughts and priorities beneath it. In relationships, especially those that carry emotional significance, people often go through phases where clarity develops unevenly. One person may feel ready to move forward, while the other is still processing what forward even means. This imbalance can feel uncertain, but it is part of how emotional readiness develops. Growth rarely happens at the same pace for both individuals, and that difference does not necessarily weaken a connection. Instead, it can shape how each person learns to understand themselves. During such periods, it becomes important not to rush meaning into every pause or silence. Not every delay is a message, and not every hesitation is a decision. Sometimes the mind simply needs time to settle into truth without pressure. When emotions are intense, clarity does not arrive through force. It arrives gradually, as layers of confusion begin to fall away, and what remains feels simpler and more honest. A deeper shift often happens when people begin to recognize the difference between attachment and alignment. Attachment is driven by fear of loss or uncertainty, while alignment is grounded in self-awareness and clarity about what feels right. When someone starts moving toward alignment, their choices become less about avoiding discomfort and more about living in accordance with their values. This transition can change how they approach relationships, decisions, and even communication itself. In this kind of inner change, courage does not always appear as bold action. More often, it shows up as quiet honesty. A person may begin to question what they have accepted without reflection, or reconsider what they truly want to build in their life. That questioning process can feel both unsettling and freeing at the same time, because it opens the door to authenticity, even if it challenges familiar comfort zones. As clarity develops, emotional expression also changes. Conversations become less about guessing or interpreting hidden meanings, and more about stating thoughts directly. Instead of fluctuating signals, there is a gradual movement towards steadiness. This does not mean everything becomes perfect or effortless, but it does mean that communication starts to reflect intention rather than confusion. When that happens, misunderstandings naturally decrease because there is less ambiguity in what is being shared. At the same time, personal growth plays an equally important role. As individuals become more self-aware, they begin to notice how much of their emotional state depends on their own internal grounding rather than external validation. This awareness shifts how they engage with relationships. Instead of seeking reassurance through uncertainty, they begin to build stability from within. That inner stability changes how they show up for others, making their presence feel more consistent and genuine. It is also important to understand that emotional transformation is rarely linear. People do not move from confusion to clarity in a single step. They move through layers of realization, sometimes revisiting old doubts before fully letting them go. This process can create moments of hesitation, reflection, and recalibration, but those moments are not setbacks. They are part of how lasting understanding forms. As individuals begin to integrate what they learn about themselves, their perception of relationships also evolves. What once felt complicated may begin to feel simpler, not because the situation has changed, but because their understanding of it has matured. They may realize that meaningful connection is not built on intensity alone, but on consistency, respect, and mutual clarity. These qualities take time to recognize and even more time to embody. In this evolving awareness, people often start to value emotional honesty more than emotional performance. Instead of trying to prove feelings through dramatic expression, they begin to focus on whether their actions align with what they truly believe. This shift creates a more grounded approach to connection, where trust is built through reliability rather than uncertainty. When trust becomes steady, the need for constant reassurance naturally decreases. There is also a subtle but powerful change that happens when someone begins to feel more secure within themselves. They no longer approach relationships from a place of scarcity or fear of being replaced. Instead, they begin to engage from a place of choice. That sense of choice transforms how they relate to others, because it introduces mutual respect into the foundation of connection. Two people can then meet each other without pressure, each bringing their own sense of wholeness. As emotional maturity grows, people often become more aware of how important timing is in relationships. Not everything can be rushed into place, even when the connection feels significant. Timing allows each person to reach a point where they can engage without losing themselves in the process. When both individuals reach that stage, interaction becomes more natural, less forced, and more aligned with who they are becoming. This kind of alignment does not rely on dramatic moments or sudden declarations. It is often recognized through consistency, through steady communication, through clear intentions, and through a sense of calm that replaces earlier uncertainty. When people begin to communicate from this grounded state, their words carry more weight because they reflect internal clarity rather than emotional fluctuation. Over time, what once felt uncertain can begin to feel more understandable, not because every question has been answered, but because there is a stronger sense of trust in how things unfold. That trust does not come from predicting outcomes, but from accepting that meaningful connections evolve through both reflection and action. When both are present, progress feels more natural. At the core of this entire process is a simple but often overlooked truth. Real connection does not require perfection, but it does require honesty. When people allow themselves to be honest about what they feel, what they need, and what they are ready for, relationships begin to take a more stable shape. Even uncertainty becomes easier to navigate when it is acknowledged openly rather than avoided. In this space of growing awareness, both individuals involved in a connection may begin to feel a shift. It is not always dramatic, but it is noticeable in the way energy settles. Confusion gives way to reflection, and reflection slowly gives way to clarity. The pace may differ for each person, but the direction becomes more aligned over time. Eventually, what emerges is not a story of waiting or guessing, but of understanding. People begin to see each other more clearly, not through projection, but through presence. And in that clarity, decisions become easier to make because they are no longer clouded by uncertainty. They are guided by awareness. When that stage arrives, communication no longer feels like effort. It feels like expression. Connection no longer feels like something to chase or decode. It feels like something to participate in with openness. And what once seemed unclear begins to settle into something more grounded, where both individuals can move forward without losing themselves in the process. In the end, what matters most is not the intensity of emotion, but the stability of understanding. When people grow into that stability, They create the conditions for relationships that are not defined by confusion, but by clarity. And from that clarity, whatever unfolds next becomes less about expectation and more about conscious choice, shaped by who they are and who they are becoming.